Hello, Facebook. Happy Tuesday to you. So before this, Joe and I were talking about, what are some of the most frequently asked questions when it comes to buying a car? And it got us thinking, what really goes into the deal? Because somebody coming off the street and having to have purchased a car recently, it's confusing and numbers are hard. Break it down for me, Joe. What goes into a car deal? Because a lot of times it's not just what you see on the sticker. There's more to it.
Well, and like you said, you asked what the frequently asked questions are, and it's not really frequently asked questions. I get asked, even by friends, family, people at church, why does everybody always want us to come in? Why do we always have to go in the building? Why can't y'all just tell us outside? And the answer is because there's about 100 moving parts when it comes to a car deal. Everybody thinks, well, no, it's just the price of your car and what you're giving me on mine, and we're done.
Here's my check.
And I wish it was that easy, but if it was that easy, they probably wouldn't have me in the chair I'm in. So I'm glad it isn't that easy. But there's a lot that goes into it. Not only is it the price of my car, what I'm giving yours, but term, credit, carry, words that means nothing to the average customer, but when it comes to a car deal, it makes a huge difference in what you can and what you can't get. Everybody thinks it's, well, we come in, we want to buy a car, we show numbers, the bank says yes, and we're done. And if that was the case, we all would love it because it'd be a lot shorter day. But unfortunately, like I said, there's about 100 moving parts that go into that. And some of it, even to someone who's been doing it for a while, is still a little confusing because, you have a customer that says, well, I have excellent credit. Well, excellent credit has a huge definition. Right. Is excellent credit, well, I have excellent car credit, I have excellent credit overall, I have excellent credit with so-and-so bank. So there's a lot of verbiage that's been thrown around that really, when you look at it, there's a big definition of that, negative equity. A lot of people don't know that negative equity will actually affect your credit approval through the banks. If you have too much negative equity, even though you have perfect credit, the bank will still say no because of the negative equity.
So talk about negative equity. That's how much you're going to owe, what you're going to have to pay back, or what the bank is giving?
Well, negative equity is, say, on your trade that you're trading in. If you owe $20,000 on your trade and it's only worth $10,000, you have a deficit of $10,000. That's your negative equity. And so everybody goes, well, what do you do with that $10,000? Well, in essence, that $10,000 goes on your new note, and some banks they won't do it because they don't want to carry that over onto your new note. And so when we come out and say, well, unfortunately, we need this much money down, it isn't because we want it. We wish we could give it to you for free. The banks are requiring it because of that negative equity. So when people ask, well, why does everybody wants to come sit down inside? Well, we want to make it where everybody understands it. That way there is no miscommunication and no misunderstanding when you leave here and you go, wait a minute, why did I have to do that again? We want to make sure you have all the correct information.
And the great thing about Classic Honda, they've made that very easy. They have it explained on the website where you can go in and you can get a good idea of what you can afford, what your car payment will likely be. A lot of things also go into that, interest rate. Your interest rate determines, your credit determines what your interest rate is going to be. Explain that a little bit. Put that into some simple terms.
So credit is one of the factors that has to do with interest rate, but it's one of the few factors. You also have not only your credit, but you have the term, how long you're going to finance it for. You also have how much you're trying to carry on the car. So if you do or do not have negative equity, so if you're putting cash down, all that goes into what's my rate going to be. You always see it on TV, and that's why it's a little misleading sometimes. You see with approved credit. With approved credit doesn't mean the bank says yes. It means that the bank says yes to the whole situation, which is term, credit, carry, how much money down you plan on putting down. All that goes in there. So when a car guy asks you these questions, it's not because we're being nosy. We need to know that so we can get the best deal for you at the bank also. Because once again, we're not the bank. The bank's the bank, and we're just kind of the middleman that's going to fight for you. Because when it comes down to it, if you don't buy a car, we didn't succeed at our job.
Yeah. So okay, I'm glad you brought up the bank. Explain that a little bit. Somebody goes into the office. You say, okay, I'm going to go talk to the bank. If a person comes in and they're not a member of a credit union, or they've gotten it already pre-approved, what's next? What happens in that step of the process?
So, especially here at Classic Honda, every manager here has sold cars before. All my sales managers have been on the floor. They've sold cars. They've been through finance. They know how the system works. They're not They do have college degrees, but they are not in the position they are in just because they have college degrees. They have worked themselves up through the ranks. And the reason I say that is because they have a pretty good grasp on what the banks are going to say. But once again, they don't. We're not the bank, so we don't know for sure. We know a pretty good. We have a pretty good grasp on it. So when we show you the numbers and we agree to them numbers, then we have to go to the bank and make sure the bank agrees with that number. And so just like you said, if you're not a member of a bank or a local credit union, we have about 15 banks that we can go through, including Honda Financial, of course, that we have to send over all the numbers to, and then we have to talk to them on the customer's behalf and basically get the bank to see what we see. So when we come out and talk to the customer, we're trying to get a good feel for the customer because we're all a big family around here, as you have heard on our Facebook Lives. So the customers are a big family too. So we're here for them. So in essence, we're fighting with the bank to make sure the customer gets the best deal they can.
And I think that is so important to drive that point home because when you, the customer, are sitting in the office waiting, that's typically the longest part of the whole process.
Yes, ma'am.
You know that they're not just in the bag going, oh yeah, I was off this email. You're actually back there fighting for them and trying to get the best deal that you can for them. And sometimes that might mean going to several banks, and who can never give the best deal for the customer.
Yes, ma'am. Definitely. Like I said, we have a pretty good grasp on it. So you'll hear terms like we talked about earlier, like shotgunning credit, which is a bad thing because that means that we send them to every bank we got. We don't do that here at Classic Honda. We're going to send it to a minimum amount of banks that we need to send to make sure you get the best deal. So yes, when you are waiting out here, and we understand waiting is the worst part of this whole process because you don't know what's going on.
Right.
You don't know if we're in the back telling jokes, which we don't tell jokes because we're not very funny guys, but we're actually back there trying to work for the customer in the best way we can to get where we need to be. So yeah, I know waiting's hard.
That's the hardest, but if you can get through that part, then everything else, it's downhill from there.
Definitely.
You just sign a bunch of papers
Yes,
if you
ma'am.
get the deal that you want. So
There you go.
thank you so much. You've made a very confusing process and sometimes pretty intimidating.
Definitely.
You've helped explain that, and I hope you can go to bed tonight knowing just a little bit more about what goes into buying a car.